Sewer, also known as June and Junko, is an Australian electronic producer who started to grow to prominence in the late 2010s and early 2020s. With songs today sitting at well over 10 million streams on platforms such as YouTube and Spotify, as well as even more plays on TikTok, Sewer has unquestionably cemented themselves as being one of the biggest and freshest faces for modern breakcore and drum and bass. But this rise to the top has not been without controversy, with Sewer easily being one of the most contentious figures in modern electronic music for a variety of different reasons. From blatant racism to animal abuse to an infatuation with underage anime girls that would even creep into a desire for real-life underage children, Sewerslvt has had, much like many other no-face internet users, a rocky online trajectory, to say the least. Intentionally aligning themselves with the dark depths of online degeneracy, from their album art to their song titles to their overall internet presence, Junko has over the years crafted the perfect musical image of having way too much screen time. And today we're going to be going over the controversial, somewhat sad life and career of one of the internet's favorite and frankly least favorite electronic producers. Sewerslvt, who I will be referring to as June for the rest of this video as this is their preferred title, was born May 16, 2000 in Adelaide, Australia. Now, something I should say before I get too into this video, just for clarity, June is male to female transgender, and I genuinely have no problem calling someone by whatever pronoun they would prefer. I really could care less, but in June's case, they haven't been completely clear on what they'd like to be referred to as, so I'm just going to call them by gender-neutral pronouns throughout this video, not because I don't respect trans people's validity. Again, I have no problem with that. It's just simply going to be the best way to refer to them, especially since I'm covering periods before they identified as trans. But very little is known about June's life prior to the initiation of their online persona. And besides things that are directly posted by them, this is still the case, with a large portion of their personal life still being pretty bleak among fans. In fact, still to this day, June hasn't even done so much as publicly shown their face, instead solely being represented by this cartoon AVI. But one thing we do know for sure is that June has had a deep infatuation with a variety of different music artists and genres ever since they can remember, being deeply influenced by the likes of Gore Shit, Machine Girl, Death Grips, especially Death Grips, as well as Gigi Allen, of all people. So, with this love of music, it would inspire June to start their own music career at the age of 16, originally going under the name Sad Boy Sheldon, which eventually turned to Boy Sheldon. And like many of the artists June was inspired by, they themselves aspired to be a sort of rebellious figure, someone who didn't give a damn, always doing as they pleased. Their first album under this pseudonym being a Death Grips mashup album of sorts titled Jenny Wakeman and the Infinite Autism, lovely title. I guess you could call this a cover album of sorts, or like a mashup album. There was very little original material of June's being featured on this record. Also, obviously, this being their first album, it never really gained any notable traction, and more so was just their foot in the door for trying out producing. Then, Sad Boy Sheldon's second release, another Death Grips mashup album, but this time a bit more focused, mainly just mixing various Death Grips songs with the Hotline Miami soundtrack. This release, however, garnered considerably more buzz than the first, getting well over 1 million views on YouTube, at least before getting taken down. But these views didn't so much as cross over to genuine fans for June, as it more so was just a cool mashup Death Grips fans could listen to and enjoy. Then June's third release under this title, and by far the most controversial, was given the aptly titled name, the N-word with a Z. Can't forget the Z. Title aside, this is more or less pretty similar to what they had been doing previously up until this point, just considerably more edgy, with song titles varying from I Will Destroy MLP in That N-Word Gemboy 2, all the way to Bubble Tea is Gay, Taiwan is Still China, fuck you. Now, just for the sake of dodging redundancy, I'm not gonna go over any of the other 4 albums released in this time period, as they're all pretty much just mashup albums of different hip-hop artists that all follow a similar theme. Notably, as I said earlier, June would change their moniker to Boy Sheldon during this time though. Here, June would soon release their first project under the Sewerslvt name titled Music to Die To Volume 2 666, which was accompanied by a complete visual visual performance. While this was technically released under the Sewerslvt title, June would also include Mixed by Boy Sheldon, which is probably why this whole album would be taken down, just to distance themselves from their past title. But this album in hindsight seems to be a sapling of what would eventually be to come of June, finally having more original material and a visual aesthetic that will continue to define them artistically, although it is a lot less dark here. Finally, after this release, June would officially drop the Boy Sheldon name and begin to officially release music under the Sewerslvt alias we have come to know them for. A name derived from a true Japanese horror story where a young girl named Junko Furuta was abducted, tortured, raped, and eventually killed by 4 teenagers. On November 25th, 1988, 2 Japanese boys were lurking around Misato in the late hours of the night, planning to find a female victim in which they could rob and exploit. The leader of which, named Miyano, had a long history of problematic behavior starting ever since elementary school. Miyano frequently hung around Yakuza members, often kidnapping and assaulting young girls. At 8:30 p.m., Junko would be spotted by the 2 boys riding home from her part-time job on her bicycle. Miyano would then order the other boy to kick Junko off her bike and then flee the scene, leading Miyano to swoop in and readjust her, then offering to walk her home. Upon gaining her trust, Miyano would proceed to lure Junko into an empty warehouse where he would rape her multiple times. He then brought Junko to a nearby hotel where he called to offer his other friends unlimited sexual reign with the young girl. This whole group had a long history of gang rape, having just done this recently to another victim, releasing her shortly after, but sadly for Junko, she wouldn't be so lucky. After the 4 boys collectively had their way with her, they brought Junko back to Miyano's house where she would be held captive for a total of 40 days. During this grueling 40-day period, she was repeatedly raped and beat, as well as lit on fire multiple times by the group, to the point where she became unrecognizable, covered with various scars and open wounds. And due to Junko's huge change in appearance from all the constant torture, the boys would begin to lose sexual interest in her over time, eventually completely igniting her on fire and killing her, where they would place Junko's dead body wrapped inside a travel bag in a local sewer, hence the name Sewerslvt. Using a stage name as dark and frankly vulgar as this one has led to a lot of backlash on June over the years, with many mad at them referring to a girl who was repeatedly raped against her will as a slut. But June has since came out to defend this name, saying it's more of a brash homage to Junko and her life story, rather than a mockery of her lowest moment. Like all other of June's music and imagery, it's derived from a morbid place of anguish, so it'd only be fitting a title of such a artist would follow a similar theme. But on a lighter note, June would release their first album under this name titled Don't Be Afraid of Dying, which was immediately a huge step up from anything they put out previously. The title, of course, being a reference to the aforementioned case, as well as the beginning letters of each track spelling out Junko Furuta. Definitely a big step up in quality between this and what June had put out previously, with them obviously putting in a lot more effort in how the music actually feels. The next album would be a Machine Girl tribute and remix album with the tongue twister of a title. Machine Girl is an enemy to freedom and homoerotic fascism. He must be stopped in the name of morality and shitty anime from the 90s, please. If you have any hope for the future, which you shouldn't, please burn 13 copies of Ginger Snaps. That was a shitty movie. So what if some edgy faggot teens become wolf girls? I'd still fuck Ginger Jews rule. Women should vote. Fuck white people, fuck black people too, fuck God, Islam forever, love Sewerslvt. The next notable album would be called Interdimensional Snuff Films, not for its music, it was really just more remixes and stuff June had already been doing prior, but for the album's cover art. Leading up to the release of this LP, June had been heavily struggling mentally and hadn't released music as consistently as they had prior to that point. The cover art was a picture taken by June in the lead up to this album's release, which detailed more about how they were currently feeling than words could ever convey. Thankfully enough, the toaster wouldn't ever end up going in the tub though. After this, June would continue to put out more of their blend of remixed hip-hop with breakcore elements until August 8th, 2018, where June would release their still biggest song to date, Pretty Cunt. This song was a completely original work of June's, only using light remixes from other works to build this aggressive aggressive but cerebral drum and bass cut. Although this song has become hated by June themselves, it's undoubtedly a fan favorite, still being their biggest stream song to date. This song proceeded to gain a lot of traction over on TikTok, and June began to see a bit of success in building a more actualized fan base. June would also start experimenting more with the visuals in their music videos, often deferring to mostly either gruesome or lewd imagery. Their since deleted song, Was It Weird Listening to I'm God by Clams Casino When I Lost My Virginity, really some creative names here, featured a young boy continuously nodding off on heroin all throughout the music video, as well as an album titled Starving Sluts Always Get Their Fix. Again, some really creative names here. This time containing a cover filled with various depictions of lolly hentai. Later, 2 tracks titled Siberia Layer 1 and Layer 2 would also be released, which are still to this current day some of June's biggest songs. These tracks are considerably more industrialized than what they had been doing at the time, with a great influence coming from Russian hard bass as a genre. Oh yeah, and the cover art would also be an anime girl sucking a penis, so that's cool too. The latter half of the track, Siberia Layer 1, would also be included in their next album, Drowning in the Sewer, released in 2019, which is also the first of June's music under the Sewerslvt name, still available on streaming services. The closure track to this album would feature a sample of a real-life live suicide, as June describes it, to show that committing suicide causes pain not just to yourself but to everyone around you. The sample includes the real-life audio of now infamous suicide of small YouTuber Schweiby. The audio consists of Schweiby shooting himself, and then the other people who were in the Discord call freaking out, and one girl even crying. And as I said, June justified using this sample as a grim way to depict how suicide hurts those around you. Whether or not this was effective is really up for you to decide. While already at this point, June was a pretty controversial figure between their edgy songs, lewd cover arts, and questionable past, it wouldn't be until November 10th when they released their Infatuation EP that people began to really start to dislike June. The third track on this said EP, titled In Melancholy, was literally just a blatant copy and paste of another artist, Foxy DK's track called 37564. This song is undeniably a carbon copy of the original, just with a boosted bass and faster tempo. June pretty much just stealing and monetizing another artist's material. If June would have released this as a remix, I'm sure nobody would have batted an eye, but due to the fact that they published it as though it was their own original song, never crediting the original artist, it sparked a lot of public backlash. But while this did make a lot of fans turn on June, that was okay, because shortly after, on Christmas Eve of that year, June would release arguably their biggest song to date, Mr. Kill Myself. Between the looming eeriness of the track and the interesting title, this song would slowly keep building and building momentum until it fully got picked up both by the TikTok and YouTube algorithms. Here, June gained monstrously more fans than anything they had prior, with this song easily being the defining moment in June's career. The original version of the song actually containing a clip of popular streamer Etika's final recorded words before he would eventually off himself, continuing this ongoing theme of suicide in June's work. It would, however, end up getting cut from the song last minute, as June felt although with the title of the song being what it is, people would somehow feel although June was making fun of Etika and his death. Then, following this song's success, it would lead us into 2020, the COVID era, and much like many other online creators, June would see a massive spike in popularity yet again. Right at the beginning of the year, putting out their biggest and most recognizable project ever, Draining Love Story. Any TikTok or YouTube success June had been seeing at the time was amplified tenfold after releasing the album, with June now having a legitimate, passionate fan base. So of course, to capitalize on this, June would put out none other than a weird meme track on SoundCloud. Kind of odd after releasing both their most popular and most critically acclaimed album. The next thing they do is put out a strange shitpost called anusbeat.wave. But hey, I guess this just shows how little June actually cares about any of this fame. Then, on their next more legitimate single, they would commission artist Cheru to do their cover art, who is known for their interesting take on on mostly furry hentai, mostly transgender furry hentai. Their notable artistic signature being the enormous breasts all of their work would feature, so yeah, that's something. The song's title was Euphoric Filth and would later be added on June's first ever released EP under the Sewerslvt name, IRLY, which stands for I Really Like You. Notably, this EP features my favorite Sewerslvt song, I Really Like You Part 1. I think this song is pretty slept on in their discography, so I just wanted to mention that. Here, after continuing to release music per usual, June would soon fall into controversy yet again. This time, not really for anything they themselves did, but the recent revelation that a artist June had collaborated with on a live album of theirs was in fact talking to underage fans. Omnipony, a semi-popular breakcore artist at the time, had been secretly flirting with a 12-year-old girl for years behind the scenes, until she would eventually come forward and shine light on this. Omnipony would take to Twitter to admit their mistakes and seek restitution, and June would just delete the whole live album altogether to avoid association, as at this time, June hadn't been caught doing anything of the sorts themselves. And at this point in time, August of 2020, the coronavirus flu had been in full swing, and June, much like many others, would end up losing their job because of it. With no regular money coming in from their day job, this left June with having no other revenue stream outside of their music. So this would lead them into posting a video on their channel called Do Not Stream My Music on Spotify. In the video, June would explain how after losing their job due to COVID, all money received from streams and Patreon were the only way they were able to keep a roof over their head. Hadn't published their music at a time where they were significantly less popular, they had used a third-party distributor to put their music on sites like Spotify and Apple Music, as they were not a signed artist at the time. June, however, did not properly look into this distributor called Ditto before using it. Ditto is a known scam distribution network that eventually restricts artists from accessing their accounts, thus exploiting them out of any of their profits. And having not had access to this account, June couldn't delete their artist profile either, so it really left them with no other way to make money unless fans streamed elsewhere, which was the point of the actual video. This actually garnered a lot of support for June, and people were surprisingly willing to externally support them, which was really awesome to see. Eventually, the whole distribution situation would be resolved though, and the video has since been deleted. But any support seen from that video would soon be demolished, as June would put out a now deleted pro-Trump rigged election tweet shortly after the American ballot. June is Australian, so why they would feel the need to alienate most of their audience to support the politics of a country they're not even a part of is beyond me, but hey, 2020 were some weird times. The tweet also encouraged violence to police officers, so that's lovely too. It seems in direct extension to this political statement, a week later, June would release their second EP titled The World Is Fucked, furthering their political position. This EP is considerably harsher and less forgiving than the previous, seemingly to fit this overall pessimistic tone. Still a good project though. Then in 2021, June would become a target of the infamous hate-breeding site Kiwi Farms. For those who don't know, the whole purpose of Kiwi Farms is exclusively just to troll and harass people, so with June's controversial past, they made for a great scapegoat on the site. The thread basically goes over their controversial past on the internet, accusing June of being weirdly into lolly, which is underage anime girls, and just overall being extremely edgy as well. But aside from bringing up things I've already covered in this video, this thread would bring out a new revelation where a user on Kiwi Farms would provide screenshots accusing June of grooming them when they were still a minor. Now, personally, I am not one to automatically believe this right away, as claims such as this one are extremely weighted and Kiwi Farm users aren't exactly a very reputable source. But the sheer amount of lolly material June has consumed and posted alongside their music would not make anyone surprised when accusations like this come out. So even though June has been pretty vocal with their love of Lolly, I do not feel though the claims of them grooming fans are legitimate, as there really just simply isn't enough evidence to confirm it. Random screenshots of an alleged conversation isn't concrete evidence, but it seems this was the narrative much of the internet ran with because, as I said, with June's past, this wasn't exactly very hard to believe, and June would start to receive more public backlash than ever. There's also screenshots that were brought up that show June confessing to torturing animals taken from their Discord account before they were quote-unquote famous, but I'm not going to show them. It's really unclear on if these are even real, and if they are real, if they're even genuine, most likely just being edgy statements a teen June posted to seem cool or badass in some way rather than an actual confession. These are some pretty big allegations, and again, same as the grooming minor screenshots, there really just isn't enough concrete evidence here to make a final stand, so I'm not going to, although it is necessary that it is mentioned, as this is undoubtedly a big part in June's online trajectory. June would address the thread in multiple different posts that can all be summed up to June just basically trying to backstep anything from their controversial past and push for a better future. A future that would not include Sewerslvt, as June had been heavily struggling mentally again, and this whole cancellation of their online persona did nothing but worsen it, so they seem to at least begin to have a sapling of the idea of retiring their Sewerslvt alias altogether. June said they were working on an album that would be their final release, and a sort of swan song to the Sewerslvt name in its entirety. June would also post a picture of both their thighs and their ass on Twitter and Discord, which would both be deleted shortly after. June would also begin to start getting doxxed by many of the users on Kiwi Farms, as well as much of June's fans being harassed online, so they decided to permanently close down their Discord and Twitter account to combat this. June subsequently really took a break from the internet as a whole, and the whole Kiwi Farms situation started to die down, with people beginning to lose interest in harassing someone who wasn't even active online anymore. Their comebacks to the internet after this hiatus would happen where June would claim responsibility for some internet meme that had been going viral at the moment. Here's a clip of the meme itself. In the comments of the YouTube video, June claims that they had originally posted it to Discord, where people continued to share it on social media until it went viral, basically saying that they are the creator of this meme. However, this comment has since been deleted. After more radio silence on June's social media accounts, they would finally release their record titled Schizophrenia Simulation on June 6, 2021. June would reopen their Discord, inviting fans to ask whatever questions they wanted, where June would say in a reply that while they would be on another hiatus, it wouldn't be indefinite, and plan to release music again sometime in the distant future. Then, after again another long break from any social media use or upload of any new music, June would randomly out the blue make a horrifying post on their community YouTube tab. June's then at the time girlfriend had committed suicide, and understandably it left June in shambles. The post reads, "Apologies for my absence, expected to be continued for some time. Someone I loved with all my heart has tragically taken their own life. A charity stream of sorts is currently being planned for the near future, the proceeds of which will be going to Beyond Blue, an Australian suicide prevention organization. But in the meantime, please give what you can. And to anyone struggling with thoughts of self-harm or suicide, please seek help. There are still people who love you and care about you and want you to pull through and get better. Again, I apologize for everything, and please consider making a donation." They would go into further detail on the situation on their Patreon, saying at the time she had been administered in a psych ward, smuggling in chemicals that she would eventually take to end her own life. June says they warned the people there of their girlfriend's depressive, suicidal tendencies, but claims it was all fallen on deaf ears. Eventually, June receiving a call that their girlfriend was, in fact, not alive anymore, completely dead devastating them and making June feel hopeless. After this, as June describes it as a way to distract themselves from life, they would start to produce Halo content on a second channel. This, however, was short-lived, with only 2 episodes ever being made, and really just seems to have been a diversion so June could focus on that instead of how their life was currently panning out. Either way, shortly after, Sewerslvt's final album titled We Had Good Times Together, Don't Forget That would release. This album was originally split into 2 EPs that both released in the months leading up to this record that got combined with a handful of other tracks as a finished product. This is, in my opinion at least, not only Sewerslvt's best album, but really the best breakcore album ever made. If June was going out, it's fair to say that they most certainly made sure to leave on a high note, as this album is extremely solid from front to back. I would liken this album to almost like a roller coaster of sorts. Super fast and exhilarating most of the time, with tracks like Whatever and Light at the End of the Tunnel. But it can also slow down the pace and make you really feel the tracks, such as on songs like The Last Thing She Ever Sent Me. In particular, I definitely have to mention the closer track with the aptly titled name Goodbye. Beside I Really Like You Part 1, as I said earlier, Goodbye is probably my second favorite Sewerslvt song of all time, with this being a 17-minute rager, all in tribute to Angel, June's deceased girlfriend. The music video showcasing various locations they had visited all throughout their relationship, ending with a memorial to Angel herself, as well as a goodbye to all Sewerslvt fans, as after this, June had officially retired the Sewerslvt name. While June has had a rough online career, I really feel although June will ultimately be remembered as a pioneer for breakcore as a genre and a great producer above all else. As someone who is genuinely a big fan of June's music, it does really suck to know nothing else is most likely ever coming out from the Sewerslvt name, but it holds me over knowing that this is what June wanted, and they're probably in a much better headspace because of it. June will always be a misunderstood internet figure, but for those who have really connected with their work over the years, Sewerslvt will always hold a special place in both our hearts and in our playlists. Okay, so this is literally the night before I plan to upload this video, and June has just released a new EP titled Symphony Part 1, officially marking June's official comeback. I've been pretty open on this channel that I work night shifts at McDonald's as my day job, and when it's the part of my shift when we close down the store and start cleaning, I'll usually put in my headphones, and you wouldn't believe how shook I was when I went to Sewerslvt's page that I saw a brand new EP sitting there. I don't know if this means June is officially back making music or this is just some one-off side project, but either way, I am very excited. Over the course of making this video, I've grew to be a genuinely really big fan of Sewerslvt, and seeing new material literally the night before I upload this, after I had thought they had retired, it really just warms my soul. But yeah, I just thought I'd throw that in there at the end. It's like 2 a.m. right now, so if you guys did enjoy, remember to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Being a smaller creator myself, it really helps out a ton, more than you think it would. I usually try not to script this little segment of the video. Everything else is obviously scripted, but I don't know. I have another video on the way, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be a banger. Don't know when that'll go up, but I'll see you there. Peace out, y'all.